Welcome to PHP Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're on episode 271.
Yeah, 271 episodes in, and celebrating our third or fourth or something like that. Q4 coming to an end, which is pretty crazy.
It is pretty crazy. It's kind of sad, this episode. I mean, we're not done yet, but we're like a week away from like Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, right? January is a lot of returns, but also people get Christmas money. So I feel like in January, I start getting a lot of eBay sales too. So
yeah,
I kind of feel like Q4 kind of carries into the start of the year, but is the rush of trying to get everything right before Christmas. Like we're pretty much towards the end of it here. And we're kind of looking at, what do we do? How do we kind of transition out of the Q4 craziness? Maybe you've been doing the retail arbitrage. Maybe the way you do eBay has changed a little bit during Q4. And how do we kind of transition back into the other 3 quarters of reselling?
Yeah. And the reason we were airing this now instead of after is, one, I'm not sure how many people are going to listen to this after. and two, really the first thing that you should do when you're transitioning out of Q4 is take a break. Right. And so, and I would say just I know it sounds weird, but I would say take a break from just, if you can, like I'm going to, but it all depends on where you're at. Just take a break from any kind of reselling.
Yeah. Any kind of work in general. I mean, companies give vacation for a reason. And I feel like if you're a reseller and you're doing it part-time, or you have another job or another side gig, you're probably using your vacation so you can resell more. But there is a majority of Americans, and I know we have some non-American listeners, it's probably a human condition, but majority of people, I feel like, are not working very hard at all most of the time, right? They go to work, they do the bare minimum, they go home, and they spend most of their day. They spend most of their day watching Netflix, doing barely anything, and they waste a bunch of time. But if you're listening to our podcast, you're probably the kind of person who's on the other end of the spectrum, which is working. And the reality is, taking a break can actually reset you some and allow you to do better. Whether it's just a few days, whether it's a week, taking that time, even like I'm a big believer in like 1 day a week is really valuable depending on how you function, but taking some time, and it doesn't mean you don't do anything. You can still listen to podcasts you enjoy, like ours. You can still, ship stuff out and things like that. But if you kind of ease back a little bit, you can actually attack the start of the next year with a lot more just ferociousness, right? Like you're ready to go, you're recharged, you're ready, as opposed to you're just dragging. And you kind of think, because I know a lot of people who, like, I only sleep 4 hours, I only sleep 5 hours, and they think they're way more productive, but they're probably only running at like 80% capacity all day long. And they think they're being so productive because they've just gotten used to being tired all the time. And so the reality is, what, if you slept,
that's me.
If you slept 8 hours, you might have like 2 hours fewer in the day to like use, but you'd be running at 100% on all the other hours. So it actually ends up being more productive.
No, I agree. I mean, I say yawn, but that's kind of how it's been for me. I mean, with Q4, I've maybe been sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night. And that could have been true. It's a little late now, but I would say in the new year, that's going to be one of my focuses, definitely bringing in more sleep. Now, on a practical level, I honestly do believe that things die right after Christmas. On eBay and on Amazon, it doesn't mean that you can't make a few sales, but there is that lull where nothing is happening, and so. You're not going to have another lull like that until probably like sometime in the summer, maybe in July or, whenever that summer slowdown happens. But for the most part, for example, what I'm doing right after Christmas, I'm traveling with my kids. I'm going out of state. We're going to go into a place where there's actually snow, and we're going to go sledding and do all that fun stuff that normal people in the Midwest are like, what? Why do you want to do that? Like, because I never did get to. And so, and I'm not, I might source a couple of times, maybe just because it's part of who I am, but I don't plan on doing much. Right. And because you need to get re-energized. right? I think, I mean, some of us, during Q4, we've not done anything, right? But just been sourcing, shipping, sourcing, shipping, sourcing, shipping, sourcing, shipping. And then you throw on eBay, sourcing, shipping, listing, sourcing, shipping, listing, has been the entire time. So,
yeah, I mean, it kind of comes to like take advantage of that like week of Christmas as sales really start to dip. Utilize that time. I mean, or whatever time works for you, but that's often a good time because sales are going to slow for a period of time. And you want to utilize that time as much as you can to spend time with family, to rest, to rejuvenate. And then at that point, recognize that sales continue. The sales are going to continue into January. I mean, of course, we talk about, all returnary people are doing a lot of returns. You do have to deal with that. But I think a lot of times people get gift cards, people get money for Christmas. I mean, think about all the people who are getting, grandma always just sends us, $50 or whatever it is. And so they collect all their money and maybe they do some returns of their own so they can get some money and go buy something they want. So most people aren't going to buy something used or buy something on eBay for somebody as a gift. But if you've got some money and you're like, I always wanted that starter jacket, then you might go onto eBay and buy it, right? So I noticed that in January, it tends to pick up a little bit for a lot of sales like that because people all of a sudden have that money. Also, people recognize that tax returns are coming and people who know that they're going to get tax returns and they don't end up owing. There's some people that just count on that every year. Like, I know I'm going to get a couple $1,000s. They file early and they start spending money because they know they got that money coming. So utilize the time, take a break, but know that you can continue listing, keep that algorithm going as much as you can because January could be a pretty big month.
No, it is. And some people would say January is bigger than December for a lot of people, right? I know on the eBay end, selling a clothing does really well for me in January, right? And it only picks up after that. So yeah, be aware of that. Now, this other piece is one that I struggle in. And luckily we're on social media and we have the podcast. So I'm always able to reflect by either listening to our old episodes or going on Instagram and checking our stories. But it's a good time to reflect on what went well during Q4. Right. And, again, I don't journal. I don't do any of that kind of stuff, but some people do. And so if you're able to write down and go, okay, this is what went well. This is why we did that episode. I think it was like 2-3 weeks ago where we went back and said, all right, are we following through on what we said about Q4? Right.
Yeah. And you made a point, like maybe you don't do because a lot of times I'm a big believer that you should personally reflect and have like personal reflection on like, okay, what are my goals in life? Am I achieving them? You need to do that periodically. But again, reselling is a business. And so I think we're going into the dreaded tax season, right? Where you've got to do all that stuff. So use that as an opportunity to reflect. Think about it. How can I use this as a business? I need to sit down and get all this stuff done anyways, all this paperwork. So why don't I actually spend some time looking over this data that I'm compiling? How many miles did I do this year compared to last year? How much, what were my cost of goods this year compared to last year?
What sold on what months?
Yeah. What months were my big months? What items were you can really start to utilize that data as opposed to, I think a lot of people they get the information to give to a tax person or to put into the system and they don't actually look and reflect on it. So utilize this time to kind of reflect a little bit. And then what that does is it lets you set new goals. I mean, I'm not a big believer necessarily that the new year is anything special or powerful, but it is in the sense that psychologically, we just have this idea of a year, right? Same thing with weeks. People, if you're going to start a diet, you should start it today. You shouldn't wait till Monday. But a lot of times that okay, a fresh start, I can go a whole week because there's something about it's been a week since I've done this, or this whole week I haven't done this, or I've woken up at 4:30 every morning this week. So the new year is a good time. But if you spend, the wrapping up of your Q4 and you don't actually reflect on, okay, what have I done and what do I want to do? Because that's a big part of reflection. Reflection isn't just looking at the past and doing nothing with it, but it's saying, what are the areas that I can improve on? What are my goals? What do I want to focus on the first few months of next year? Do I want to scale my business up? Okay, now I have a goal. What are the actionable steps I need to take to get there? Are they reasonable steps? What do I have to do? Because when I've got some pretty big life things going on in my life right now, and it can be overwhelming. But then if I sit down and look at a calendar and I say, okay, I've got this many weeks before this thing has to be done. And then you start breaking down the tasks and it's oh man, it's 1 or 2 things a day. It's 20 minutes here and there. I've got to do this. Then I can sleep knowing that all right, I did the 2 things I needed to do today. Tomorrow, I'm going to do the 2 things I need to do tomorrow. And it's not the whole project is looming over me. And if you've got this goal, I'm going to expand my business, you're either stressed about it because you're just thinking of all the stuff you have to do, or you just have it as like this pipe dream that's never actually going to happen because you don't have the steps to take. So use the reflection that you spend at the end of Q4 to kind of prepare you in 2022 is a new year. How can I make sure that 2022 for reselling is better for me than last year?
Yeah. And I would say the first time I did this was last year, and I figured out, what the waves, what the patterns are as far. And so, for example, one of the things is I buy a lot of stuff in January that I don't intend to actually sell until May or June. And I'm able to pick up a lot of it because I know how the pattern is, and that's what I do. I know for Q4, one thing I picked up in this reflection is that probably the most of my buying is done in early November, late October, right? And I don't do FBA after Black Friday. It's very rare that I'll send in stuff to the warehouse. And so those are all new things that had I not stopped and kind of thought it through, that, I may have not followed through. And so it causes me, for example, to be heavy on selling a lot of eBay, right? To grow my capital just in case I need it. I do use credit cards for my Amazon, but it's also nice to have cash in hand because, I always go like, what if I max out my cards and I can't source anymore, right? And so all those things play a part. You just got to figure out, for example, take a look. It's very easy, with therapy, what items sell at what time of the year. And so there are certain items now that I will source, let's say March, and I know that they're going to sell really well come May. And so these are things you all should be thinking about, especially for full time, right? Because unless you figure it out, which I just haven't figured it out, but there are different ways that you need to make money in reselling to continue to pay the bills, to continue building. So, for example, I know for me, Q4 is a given, right? November, December, that's where I make a ton of money. But I know on the eBay side, like garage sale season, right, from March through May, a little bit into June, and then it starts up again from August to September. There's a lot of money that to be made, but I need to make sure that I have the capital. And so I'm selling whatever I can throughout the summer to make sure I have that cash in hand for garage sales. So I don't know if that kind of made sense, but
yeah, it's good.
All right. Now this other part, this is the one I'm not a fan of this, but it's necessary. It's organization, right? The thing with organization, it's always hard to find the time, right? Because you're like, hey, I'd rather be listing, I'd rather be sourcing. Organization to me feels like you're losing money, but that's not the reality. You're actually saving money by being organized. So when things do go down, you're saving time, which allows you to do the other things that you want to do that makes you money. Now, what do I mean by all that organization? It can mean organizing your inventory, right? Maybe you went through this Q4 and it was heinous. You couldn't find stuff. You lost stuff. And now that things are calmed down, it's time for you to organize, right? The other thing is, bookkeeping, right? Are you still using GoDaddy as far as yours?
Yeah, we use GoDaddy for a lot of things. Actually, no, it's not GoDaddy. I've never used GoDaddy. Okay. We use Quicken Books.
Oh, Quicken Books.
Because we use TurboTax for doing our taxes. And it comes as like a special, you file your taxes through them and you get a special day. And it does all the same stuff, tracking mileage and all of that. And that's definitely very helpful. But, other bookkeeping is important too. And, preparing for taxes, and especially, I don't think it actually goes into effect for this time of filing taxes. Maybe it does. I need to look more into it. But, if you've been kind of an under the radar sailor, you've been trying to stay under that 20,000, so you're not getting the whatever it is, the 1099, that's over, right? It's going to be $600, and it may not be for the 2021 year. It might start in the 2022 year. But even on Venmo, like I have friends that, like we pay each other for, went out to eat. And so here's $50 for my portion of it through Venmo. If it's more than $600 over the course of a year, it's tallied over a year. If they make more than $600 on Venmo, they're gonna have to pay taxes on that. Mm-hmm. So it's or you're gonna have to be able to identify like this is taxable, this is not taxable. So if you haven't been doing bookkeeping, like you've got to start. And again, 2022, that is one of the things that it is 100% hard deadline, fresh start of the new tax season. So if you haven't been organized, you can kind of at least get your organization system set up. how am I going to track miles? How am I going to track these things? How am I going to track receipts, cost of goods? Am I going to do, there's different ways of filing your taxes. Are you going to take the tax deduction when you purchase the goods or when the goods sell, right? For the cost of goods item. So you need to figure all that stuff out now so that going into 2022, you're good to go. Kind of can't undo. Like if you haven't been keeping up with your bookkeeping 2021, it's kind of, you're scrambling, you're trying to figure stuff out, but you can at least get organized enough so that you can do what you can with this year. And then for the next year, there's not going to be any issues. Cause I think that would be one nice thing in an audit. You were audited and it was like, hey, this year the paperwork's a little bit wacky, but the following 2 years, like I've got everything lined up. And then if you could show like, hey, I've got all of my receipts for 2 years, I've got all of my stuff tracked for 2 years, and it's pretty much on par with that year that everything was a little bit wacky, I think you'd be okay, right? Yeah, I think you'd be better off. And I mean, I'm not an IRS person, so I don't know for sure, but I think
it's not financial advice.
No, but I mean, I think it is good financial advice to say, no matter what, at some point you need to get focused and organized. So that you are
100%, especially if full time. Like it's so necessary. Even if it just means that you just throw stuff in boxes, like at least you have them, right? The thing is, you want to make sure you have a paper trail. Now, some people may argue that not having a paper trail helps you out. That's a whole other discussion. But you got to understand, like under this current government, right? There's 80,000 new IRS agents that are being brought on. Okay, doubling the size of the agency, right? And so, if there's ever a time to organize your bookkeeping, the time is now, right? And I mean, if there's, the more we spend, the more we're going to have to find money, right?
Yeah.
So,
even banks now have to report. I think what is it, $400 for banks? Any transactions over $400?
Yeah, they're going into crypto too.
Yeah,
I mean, it's everywhere.
It's definitely a different time, and they need to hire more people to track this stuff. But that says that something's going to be done with it. It's not just like, hey, there's these new regulations going to be put in place, but you're probably never going to get audited because who has the time for it? Well, if they're doubling the size of the IRS, well, there's some people who can handle that.
Yeah, and so and what does this mean? Okay, if you haven't had a mileage tracker, maybe it's time to get a mileage tracker. I use Mile IQ, and it works in the background, and it's been great, right? I can use GoDaddy Bookkeeping because it syncs all my cards, and it also it syncs my eBay managed payments. And so you got to think these through, and what better time, because there is that downtime. Right. You're not going like, oh no, I'm missing out on sales. Well, sales may not happen even if you're doing stuff, right? Because people are they're spending time with their families and they're out, on vacation too. Now, this other thing is it's a perfect time to replenish shipping supplies, right? And I think it's because a lot of people aren't thinking about it, right? During this Q4, I almost had to contact Mike. I ran out of a padded mailer. I was out for like 3 days. And I had to kind of, I was able to figure out ways where it didn't cost me money. But would you have had some?
Yeah, I've got a few.
Okay. So, and what happened is I've preached about ordering early. I actually sold so much that I sold through it all went away. I didn't think it was going to happen. And then I ordered before it ran out, but it took like a week longer than I expected for it to arrive. And so, this is a great time. This is for you also to assess, all right, how much did I need during this Q4? How much time did I waste during this Q4 looking for shipping supplies? And so now things are kind of calmed down and maybe even dead a little bit. You can replenish what you need. So definitely use that time.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get to our next segment, if you haven't been using our sponsor, AmericanBubbleBoy.com, definitely if you're trying to replenish supplies, this is the company to go to for the bubble wrap. They also have this thing called Instapack. Check it out. It's pretty awesome. They actually have like a sample size that you can buy. You can buy one of each kind, and definitely helps you, ship out those, those collectibles or those items that can get easily damaged in transit.
Plus, it's just fun to use.
It is fun to get. It gets pretty hot, but yeah. You have to be careful. But anyways, AmericanBubbleBoy.com. Our promo code is Pure Hustle Podcast. And so definitely check that out. And, again, maybe down the road, we may have another promo code to help you out. So if you haven't been following us on social media, make sure to follow us. We are Pure Hustle Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. We are Pure Hustle Cast on Twitter. If you haven't yet, you can always give us a call about your hustle of the week that we're going to share here soon, or any questions, 619-738-1170. That's 619-738-1170. Or you can, as always, shoot us an email, purehustlepodcast@gmail.com. That's purehustlepodcast@gmail.com. And if you've been listening to us, what should people be doing? They're only on the podcast.
Oh man, you've got to go over to YouTube, hit like and subscribe, because 2 reasons. One, it helps us in the algorithm, and it helps
100%.
build our audience. And if
Just
we get
comment.
And if we get to 10,000 likes, we can start selling merchandise on YouTube. We can like put it underneath so we can get some cool PHP swag. So if you're like, man, I'd love to be rocking some PHP swag, that'd be a good way to help us get there. And then the second reason is we have a lot of content that goes onto YouTube that does not make it onto the podcast. So on Mondays, we have like little 10 to 15 minute episodes. They're basically mini-sodes, we call them. And then also throughout the week, sometimes we do ride-alongs, garage sale hauls. We've been doing a lot of shorts. So,
a lot of shorts because we've been busy, but it's been
anywhere from like 15 to 30 seconds of here's an item, here's a way to pack something, here's something to look for, here's how you know this is vintage. So those are some great sources to get. If you're not already on YouTube, make sure to follow us. Make sure to hit the notification button, hit the bell. That way you get notified when we are actually putting stuff out there. And like, comment, just let us show the love. We love when you do that.
And another way you could also help us out, we already mentioned about buymeacoffee.com/purehustle, is by just leaving us a review on iTunes, a positive review, because they always help us out. We are the #1 reviewed reselling podcast, and it allows us to be higher in the algorithm.
We need to have like a little stinger that's like Pure Hustle Podcast.
I've thought about
#1 reselling podcast in the world.
We don't need all that.
In the world.
I have thought about the fact that we need like some kind of stinger at the end of each episode.
Oh, it's got to be at the beginning, like you are now listening to Pure Hustle Podcast, like old school, like monster truck rally, like announcer. It'd be great.
So I just want to share one of the reviews, just because I always want to, people spend the time and I want to share them. So I shared 2 of them. This one's from earlier in the month. Is a simple one. 5 stars. They said worth a listening. Definitely a great show. Keep up the great work. And then this other one. Oh, what I do with it? Here it goes. All right, here it goes. This is from Revivify Me. Okay, and this was just recently dropped. It said, outstanding. Been listening and watching for a few months, and you guys keep me on my hustle. Great information and format. Love the synergy. It's good.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are like, Orlando, okay, real quick, before I read this, I do need to apologize. A few podcasts ago, I was not listening to you when you were talking to me. So there was a PJ Masks thing that I was trying to ship out. It was from Australia.
Yeah.
And you were trying to tell me something, and I just wasn't paying attention. And here's what cracks me up. And they're listening to it. So 2 of my good friends that listen to this podcast, they call me or they message me and they're like, Orlando, you have not changed since college. You're still ignorant and stubborn. And you don't listen. And I was dying.
Was it when I was telling you how to reword the...
Yes. And somebody, I think Nashville Flippers, they left a comment like, Mike says this, or Orlando says what? I'm going to do my own or whatever. And Mike says this, or Orlando says this. And it was so hilarious because they're like, man, what would we, how awesome would it be if we could just go to lunch with Mike without you there and talk about how you function? And I'm like, oh man, was it that bad? They're like, Orlando, it was straight up you 20 years ago, and things have not changed. So
that's all right. I mean, it's part of who you are.
It's part of our synergy too.
That's exactly right. Right. I mean, we can even riff off it a little bit. You interrupt. You haven't interrupted as much, and I push back against a lot of stuff that you say.
You do,
I'm
which I need.
The one that's being I'll question everything and throw a different perspective. So that's what makes Pure Hustle Podcast Pure Hustle Podcast.
No, I'm good with it. It cracked me up because Mike and I are good friends. Like all the time, people are like, "Oh, Mike's so mean to Orlando," or Orlando never listens to Mike. But that I think that's a good friendship.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
we can riff off each other a little bit, and it's because we trust each other. I wouldn't be able to be as mean. I'm like not mean at all to people who I don't know or trust. Yeah. But I feel comfortable telling you straight up, you're wrong, man. And I don't do that to as many people because I don't trust them.
And I have no problem telling Mike, you might be right.
Yeah, you might be right.
So there you go. All right. Anyways, go back to Revivify Me. Their review said, been listening and watching for a few months. You guys keep me on my hustle. Great information and format. Love the synergy. Been reselling part-time since 1999. Props to you. And I learned something new every episode. So that means a lot to me, right? Because it's like this episode, not only this episode, but all our episodes, I always sometimes go, man, do veteran, resellers, do they gain from our podcast, or they just need something in the background, right? While they're working. And I love it when people are like, hey, there's actually a lot to gain. Even though we've been reselling for years on eBay or Amazon. Then they said, left San Diego in 2014 and you make me homesick. Keep it up. I don't know. Have we been positive about San Diego lately? We've been kind of, it is a beautiful place.
Yeah. San Diego is a beautiful city, but it's California in general. I mean, there's beautiful parts of California and like the weather's great, but it's when I hear about what other people pay for their property in other states,
Mike's looking at
taxes,
moving.
and it's just, it's hard to be in California when you see other states when it's like, I could get what for what? When a mansion in another state is literally like a rundown condo here. It's pretty nuts.
I know. I mean, the place I'm living in right now, like the rent I'm paying, I could be living large somewhere else.
Yeah. No, when you told me how much you pay for rent, I told my wife, I'm like, we can't live here. We can't do it.
It is obnoxious.
We literally live in a fifth wheel.
That doesn't even cover the landscaping I have to pay for. Mm. Right. So it's pretty crazy. But anyways, appreciate all of you. I don't think I'm ever going to leave Cali. Honestly, I don't. I don't know. It's crazy out here. It's crazy, but I love it. So, all right. Are we ready for our hustle of the week?
Yeah. Come on, hustlers. It's the freaking hustle of the week. Yeah.
Can we flip things? Can we switch things up a little bit? Like
we can do whatever we want. This is our podcast.
Because I have something to add. So, do the first two, and I'll do the last one.
All right, cool.
All right.
So, I mean, it doesn't matter to me because I don't read them beforehand, anyways, which is what makes it fun.
I know, but I just don't want to. I don't want to interrupt you.
Yeah. I appreciate that. So Ryan, Instagram handle at race.
Rack Resellers.
Rack Resellers.
Yeah, this is like their third hustle of the week with us, too.
Nice. So at Rack Resellers, RAC Resellers, went to a church rummage sale, love those, and picked up 3 jackets for $5. Listed a Montclair, oh, so great. Mel hooded down woman's winter puff jacket on eBay for $750 and sold for a best offer of $600 plus shipping. I've only ever ran into one Montclair before, and I picked it up at a thrift store when I was on a road trip.
I remember.
And I haven't found any more since then, but that I know now. If you can get your hands on a Montclair, that is a high-end jacket. So $5 to $600 plus shipping.
Yeah, so I was looking for his listing just because I took a screenshot when he sent it to me, but I couldn't tell what kind of Montclair jacket it was, and I didn't want to bug him and message him. So I'm going through eBay looking for listings, and man, there's so much Montclair that sells. And all the new sales were like high sales.
Yeah, no, I mean, I paid up for our jacket. We paid like $75 and we sold it for like, $500 or something. So it's just, they're great. If you can get your hands on some Montclair, there's money in it.
So I want to bring up Ryan real quick because Ryan had DM me. And if you don't mind, Ryan, I should have asked you beforehand. I'm sure it doesn't matter. He picked up his jacket at a church rummage sale. Right. And I've been asked this before, like, I like to negotiate all the time. Do you negotiate at church rummage sales, Mike?
No, not at church rummage sales.
So when they ask you, here's the thing: you may not negotiate, but usually sometimes you go to pay, and they're like, "Just pay whatever you feel like paying." What do you do then?
Luckily, I haven't ran into that at a church rummage sale. But I mean, a lot of times the workers will kind of throw stuff in, and they'll kind of like count things, and like, "Oh, this is a men's pants, but it's I'll just give you the price of the women's pants because it's the other stuff that you got." And so they'll give me deals, but I haven't had that because I think I would feel bad going really low at a church rummage sale.
Okay,
that's where my conscience is like, I'm not going to overpay for anything, but I'm not going to haggle there.
All right, so I'm a little different. Where this is going? I know I'm gonna get hate. I'm gonna get trolled. Whatever. Don't care. So I do haggle. I will say, can we work on this? Yeah, but here's the thing. After I buy everything, then I'll say, hey, by the way, thanks so much for working with me. Here's some money. And I'll give them money on top of that.
So what's the point of the haggling?
Because I still like to get a good price for the cost that I'm getting. And I'd rather give out of a heart of abundance when I'm giving to the institution than like having to do a transaction.
So let's say it's $100.
So I'll give more than I'll make. I'll give not more than I'll make. I'll give more than they would have gotten from me had I paid what they wanted.
So you're saying if they would have charged $100 for everything you got together, you talk them down to 75, and then you give them 110 and you feel like you've given them more money than if you'd have just given them 110 and they charged you 100?
Yeah, I never pay that. I've never gone to a church where someone pay that.
Well, I'm just using it.
But let's say it's $20. Let's say it's $20, right? And like they give me everything for $10, right? Then after I'm like, hey, thanks so much. Here's, and I'll give them like $20, right? Because
that seems like such a waste of time.
I just like separating. I don't know.
But it's not separate because to them, all the money goes to the same place. It's not like they're going to say like this covers our cost and this was extra donation.
All right. Now, but everybody, it's each their own. Okay. I still give though. I'm not a Scrooge.
But it just seems silly to like negotiate, to spend the time negotiating.
Well, because when I go, they usually entertain it. They're like, "What are you thinking on this?" Okay. Or how much do you want to pay for it? And like, I cannot tell a lie.
I mean, I feel like just most of the time when I go to church rummage sales, like they're set on their prices. Like,
oh no, everyone I go to
or $2 and they already have prices.
I might have gone to maybe a handful that are like that.
Really?
But in my experience is usually like, so what are you thinking? Or how much how much do you want to pay? And So let us know. Orlando, just put Orlando equals Scrooge if you think, but you have to remember, I still give after. So I'm Scrooge after the Ghost of Christmas Future.
But see, if they're willing to take 20 for everything, and you're going to give them 40 and you are going to haggle them down to 10 and then give them 40, it's just a waste of time.
You know what?
I might be right.
You're right. Okay, you're right. All right. So maybe I'll change my ways. Maybe we'll make that the New Year's resolution. Okay. All right. Anyways.
I think you just like haggling. I think like it's a game.
Oh, I love it. Here's
what you should
haggling.
do. You should just tell them, look, I'm going to give you $40 for this stuff because that's what I want to pay you for it, because I want to donate a little bit to your cause.
What?
But let's haggle. Like, let's see if we can get this purchase under 99 cents, and then the 39 will just be, just extra. And then you can still haggle.
That is obnoxious.
That's basically what you're doing.
All right. Anyways, moving on. All right. So Mike, you're going to do the next one.
All right, cool. So our next one is Greg, IG handle.
I would just spell that one out.
PI. So it's at PIRIEG27. Purig. Pulled up to a yard sale, but had no cell service. Oh, that's the worst. Saw a box with 20 Blu-ray movies with cases for $1 each, and 75% of them were horror movies, so knew there was money there. Oh, I didn't know. I need to look into that. I know like old vintage horror movies are kind of,
and VHS. We've talked about VHS. Yeah. Like it's obnoxious right now.
So noticed a Cookie Monster jar next to it for $3. Asked if they were willing to throw in the cookie jar if he bought all the Blu-rays. So they agreed. He paid $20 for everything. He looked up comps and also saw a chip. Oof. Still listed it and noted the chip and sold on eBay for $110. Wow. So that was just like a throw in. Like, I want to get these Blu-rays. There's money in this. You throw this in. And that's the worst when you get home and you see the chip and you're like, man, I thought this could sell for something. And still you were able to get it. Man, that's awesome.
That's one way to negotiate, right? Just hey, can you just throw that in? It's funny because you can actually get away with doing that. Like after you make the purchase, like, can I just throw this in after? And sometimes they'll do it.
Yeah. I mean, so this is airing. My wife's already driven it home, but right now my wife is driving home a trailer that we bought from a friend of ours who I've talked about on the podcast, who resells.
Oh yeah.
And he's really like, he resells a lot better than I do in the sense of, I mean, he knows his niche, but he's not afraid to like throw down big amounts of money, right? He'll see like somebody selling some stuff and he'll say like, okay, I'll buy all this stuff. Do you have more stuff? And he'll say, okay, I'll buy all of it. Kind of like what you'll do. But I mean, he'll drop like $5,000 to $15,000 on sales all the time. And he bought this trailer, wasn't even part of the guy drove to him to show him the stuff that he had to sell. And he goes, I'll buy it all and the trailer. And the guy's like, the trailer's not for sale. And he's like, well, I'll give you X amount of money. And he's like, I literally have, it's like cash in hand. And so the guy's like, how did you talk me into selling this trailer when it wasn't even for sale? And so, yeah, I mean, money talks. So when if you can throw things in, and if you're saying, so if you were to just pick out a few of the DVDs, few of those Blu-rays, and that's why I bring this up. If you'd have picked out half of them, the ones you thought were worth money, and said, I'll buy these. Oh, and then what about this cookie jar? It's not as powerful as saying, all right, I'm just going to buy all of these.
Yeah,
Blu-ray.
Sometimes you got to buy junk to get the deal.
Yep. So
I agree.
That's a good strategy.
I would say my best bulk buys have been like, yeah, I know I'm going to get some junk, but there's value in all of it, So, all right. So this next one, thank you so much, Greg. This comes from Dayton, IG handle Dayton CJ. Okay, Dayton with an E. All right, and was sourcing at a thrift store and came across a vintage chiffon dress. I don't even know what those look like. You know, I really wish there's so much money in women's clothing, but there also is a lot to sort through. Like I tried it for a while, but you know, I think she gained some of the experience from. Did I see? Gained some of the experience from their mother also doing estate sales, right? And so ended up, you know, recognized it. But I'd asked, I said, what is the brand? Because I'm like, you know, how do you know? Like, how do you know one chiffon dress from another chiffon dress? And, you know, replied and said, they found it. It was actually a dress that was hanging underneath a woman's button-up nightshirt. So that's some skills right there. Okay. Only noticed it because of the lace trim on the bottom and how the material was sticking out way further than the shirt. It had definitely been looked over. I'm like, there's no way I would have noticed it. So when it runs in the family, that's a good thing, right? And so I asked for the brand, and so they paid $1 for this chiffon dress. $1. So the tag, it looks vintage. It's in time, California, which I've never heard. So I don't know if that's a bolo or maybe it's just somebody. But remember, in the vintage world, it doesn't always have to be a brand.
I mean, you know, it's vintage because the size is all.
Yeah, no.
Size.
That is true.
This is all.
That is true.
Maybe everybody's the same size. Like, you know, just everyone.
So, so I had it listed on eBay, and remember, paid $1, and it sold for $275 free ship.
That's crazy. Good.
That's just nice work there, Dayton. I'm just like, again, this is the modern day treasure hunt. You just never know.
Yep.
So, all right. Hey, thanks everyone that shared the hustle of the week. Ryan, Rack Resellers on Instagram. Greg, Purig27 on Instagram. Dayton with an E. Dayton CJ on Instagram. Appreciate it. All right. Hopefully ours can live up to that standard, or at least close. No. All right. What do you got, Mike?
So mine's an interesting one because I bought, this was probably 5 years ago. No, it would have been 4 because it was my son was just born. And so like it's my first Father's Day birthday gift. So my birthday's right around Father's Day. I got an action camera and I got like a gimbal for it. And the action camera wasn't bad. It was like the top of the line at the time GoPro was going for like $300 or $400. And this action camera was only like $150. But it had like good reviews. It had some good things that it could do.
The one you use on your YouTube sometimes.
No. Well, no, I've never used that one.
Okay.
I got a new one. I have, the one I have now is fantastic. Osmo. Okay. In fact, the new Osmo, it's DJI is the company that makes it. The new one, it's like a small little block, and they're calling it like a GoPro killer. It's like it's by far the best action camera there is. But anyways, so this was called a Yi 4K, and it was like. Because if you go on to Amazon and you just type in like 4K action cameras, you get a lot of them that are between $30 to $60. There's like a ton of like cheap junky ones, but this one was like $150. And the reviews on it was really good. It had a lot of people. I was watching videos that people made. So I got this thing and I used it and I liked it, but it wasn't for me. Like I had to have the gimbal for it to like be really smooth, and I didn't use it as much as I thought I would. And it's like 4 years later, and I'm like, okay, I needed one to do for my garage sale video. So I bought one that is better. It's a much nicer camera. And so I'm like, what am I going to do with this old one? Every time I clear out my like camera closet, I see this thing and it's just kind of in a box. So I'm like, what am I going to do with this thing? I was like, maybe I'll give it to my son. Like this would be something I could give to my son. He could just play with it. Who cares? And so I looked it up and I saw they were selling for like over $100 on eBay used. And I'm like, holy smokes. Like, I definitely got more than $50 use out of it. So I bought my son like a $20 like kids camera. And then I was like, I'm going to list this thing. And I hadn't listed it. Finally, I'm like, you know what? I was organizing my room and I saw it again. I'm like, I'm just going to list it right now. So I threw it on the kitchen table, took some pictures of it, and it sold within like 24 hours for over $100.
Nice.
And I'm like, man, that was just sitting there. And just to think that like that, something that I paid $150 for, and that was with a ton of accessories and extra batteries and all this stuff. I was able to get more than $50 use out of it because I've used it for like the last 4 years, vacations and things like that. And I was able to sell it for $100. So it just goes to show sometimes a lot of electronics really go down in value. Like I have an old Amazon Kindle Fire, and it's just worthless now. It's like $5-10 I could probably resell it for, and probably paid 120, 150 when it first came out. And some really go down, and some, for whatever reason, they have a cult following. This Yi 4K is it's like a well-known camera, and it sells. So you can be on the lookout for these types of action cameras. A lot of them are junk, but a lot of the cheaper in non-GoPro or non-DJI Osmos are not good. But if you see a Yi, it's just YI, that's the brand. They sell pretty good. So you can look up comps on those. So it's a hustle of the week, because I took something that's just been sitting there, and I would have eventually, it's going to lose value to it's pointless, and it's just going to be a kid's toy. Or I can list it and recoup a lot of my cost.
All right. So I gotta tell you, I love it when that happens, though. You know what I mean? Like I've had some stuff that I'm like, I don't use this anymore, or let me list it, or I get something that's updated, and then it's like, wow, it's actually worth more than what I paid for it. Yeah. So, all right. So my hustle of the week goes back 4 years. If you guys had caught our podcast in the early days, and some of you are the real ones from day one, I had a massive Toys R Us haul, and that was because Toys R Us was liquidating, and this was right when I started going full time. It was crazy how it aligned at the same time that I was doing things. And so I've talked about the Playmobil haul a lot, right? I mean, I don't know how many times I talked about it, but I didn't talk about the Leapfrog portion of my haul. So at that point in time, they're clearancing everything. And I went to one store, and they had it. I forget what they called it. Oh, it was augmented. So augmented goods were items that were not from Toys R Us, that they had bought out from another, so Liquidator bought out from another store, and they just weren't able to sell it. And so they brought up all those items, and they put them on the shelves of Toys R Us. So they had, liquidated FAO Schwartz. And from FAO Schwartz, they had all this Leapfrog stuff, a ton of it. And I went to the store, and I said, hey, listen, I know everything's 50% off, but some of this stuff doesn't have prices. What are you thinking? And I remember at that time, the lady said, grab the cheapest Leapster thing you can find, and we'll give you 50% off of it. So I'm looking, I'm like, I want to sign it for $1, Well, unfortunately, the cheapest thing, because remember, they're trying to make some profits, so they raise the prices and everything. So the cheapest thing I found was some Leapster thing for $12. And so I brought it up, and I said, all right, so is everything from this point forward $6? They're like, yep. So I purchased, I don't know, 300 to 500 Leapster items. Okay. Now here's the thing. The catch with it is that some of those items were already old. And what I mean by this is one of them was a Leapster Palm Pilot. Right. And in 2018, 2017, whatever, when it closed out, who's using Palm Pilots anymore? Right. All the kids want the Leapster iPhone. Yep. Right.
Or an iPad looking one.
Right? But I decided to keep all the Leapster stuff. So I bought a ton of fridge magnets. A ton. I have probably 50 to 100 refrigerator magnets. And over the last few years.
Are Leapfrog?
Yeah, they're Leapfrog.
And you paid $6 for those?
Yeah.
Ooh. Refrigerator magnets?
Yeah.
And they sell?
Yeah. For 30 to $40 a piece.
Wow.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Why? What's up?
I mean,
you probably bought one at the store for 20. Right?
No, I had no idea that a refrigerator magnet would sell for that much.
Yeah, well, they're okay. They're not just magnets. It's an ABC one.
Oh, I see.
So you put the letters A, B, and it sings along and stuff. So yeah, it's not just
I thought it was a branded Leapfrog.
No, but I'm glad so I can clarify to everybody listening. No. It's the musical one. One was it had different kinds of transportation. So if you put it, it's an airplane. Another one was the alphabet. Another one was numbers and stuff like that. So one was people could put their pictures and they could record a message. So grandma could record it and then send it out. So I bought all these, and I instantly made my, profit on it within a few weeks. It didn't take much because I paid $6 a piece on each of these. And so what ended up happening is I kept these, and through the move, I actually was considering all right, should I just bulk sell all these? Should I just get rid of them? And what ended up happening is I was like, no, people are going to eventually look for this stuff. And so this Q4, I've been selling these, right? I've sold some, on Amazon, on eBay, not so much, but I just recently sold one of the Palm Pilot ones. Nice. I sold one of the handheld devices. Here's the thing. Not everybody is a fan of iPad like toys.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you're giving, almost $1,000 devices to someone and it might break. Right. And so, remember the old school Leapsters? Do you remember those?
Yep.
Right. They don't sell
game console thing.
Yeah. They used to sell pretty good for reselling if you found them used. They don't sell well at all anymore. No. But I do have some systems that are self-contained and you can still buy the games for them and they're new. And so they're selling because they're new, but they're not selling for a ton. They're selling for like $50 a piece, but I only paid $6. Right. And they're not costing me much. And so, yeah, I just have this whole bunch of inventory that is just selling that I've already profited on years ago. And so that's my hustle of the week.
I get.
So there you have it. All right. Now, before we move on to, this whole idea of, okay, it's Q4, it's ended. And so what should we look forward to? Now, hopefully one of our sponsors, you're able to enjoy a skull shaver. But if you haven't yet,
you can look forward to getting the cleanest dome you've ever had by using a skull shaver. Skull shaver is a great product. It's one of the products you can go buy a cheap shaver, electric razor shaver thing at Walmart for $30-$40. And you are going to replace it in a few weeks and it's going to give you nicks and it's not going to work very well. And you're going to have patchy scalp. It's going to be terrible.
Which has happened to me before when I didn't use a skull shaver.
Or you can pay up a little bit and get yourself something that, we're going on well over a year now of using the exact same skull shaver. I use it every single day and the thing is a beast. It just keeps going. It cuts like crazy and it's super convenient. So you can look forward to an easy routine of keeping your head nice and shaved. And use our promo code. Use our promo code PURE and you'll get a nice little discount. Lets them know that we sent you.
There you go. So skullshaver.com, promo code PURE. All right. So part of this transition of Q4, right, is you have to look forward now, right? We talked about reflecting. We talked about organizing. And it's understanding, right, that you want to start off strong. Now, we kind of talked about this a little bit. We talked about, using certain programs, keeping receipts and all, but you want to do this January 1st. I can't tell you. For myself, I'm in trouble because there's a couple months that I got lazy and then I didn't take care of stuff. And, luckily taxes, you don't have to submit stuff till April. So I do spend a lot of time, usually around February, trying to get everything sorted out.
Yeah. And that just goes to show that being lazy in the moment doesn't actually save you any time because you're going to end up spending that time January, February, getting stuff ready for taxes. Whereas you could be December 31st, your tax stuff's already all ready to go. And you don't have to, because now you almost have to do double next year, right? Like next year, you've got to get ready to file for 2021. And then you also have to make sure you're doing everything right so you can file for 2022.
Yeah.
So, you want to start off on the right foot and you might be in a place like Orlando was saying, where you're paying for it this year. You're trying to deal with last year's taxes and you're trying to keep up to date with this year's taxes. But if you start it this year right, then next year, when it comes time to tax season, you've got everything already done. You don't have to spend any time and you're actually going to be able to breathe come 2023.
No, agreed. And so start off strong, January 1st. This podcast is dropping, I think we're dropping this December 15th, right? Or whatever, right? It's the week before Christmas. And so you'll have some time to kind of lay out like, okay, January 1st, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to make sure I have a mileage tracker. I'm going to make sure I'm tracking. I'm going to make sure that I have a box for receipts. I'm going to make sure that, I'm not too heavy on spreadsheets, but if spreadsheets is something you want to use, then January 1, right? And, we use that book, Atomic Habits, right? And about like, it takes a certain amount of time to develop habits, but you should work habits into your everyday routine. Like, hey, before I eat lunch, I'm going to do this. And maybe you want to do that with, by the way, I strongly recommend reading Atomic Habits. It's been one of the most impactful books I've ever read. I think it's great. Maybe some people will say it's a gimmick, but it was a gimmick that worked for me. But, work it into something. Hey, for my reselling, I am not in, before I turn on Netflix and start listing, I'm going to make sure that I update my spreadsheet, or I'm going to make sure that I, go on GoDaddy bookkeeping and see what's going on. And it'll definitely help you for the new year. Now, January is a big month for sourcing. Have you done a lot of sourcing in January before?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're getting, because a lot of times it's stores are clearancing things out. We talk in the past about like Christmas clearance as far as Christmas items, but even stores, and I don't know what it's going to be like this year because of, inventory shortages and shipping, but we've got to realize that a lot of stores are getting stuff months after they were supposed to have gotten them. And so if the shipping supply starts to loosen up and things are starting to arrive closer to times, you got to figure there's going to be a backlog of things. Stores are going to have more inventory coming because they ordered a bunch for Christmas, maybe didn't come in. All of a sudden it starts showing up January and February, and they're getting their January shipments coming in also. They're going to have a lot of stuff. They're going to want to move things quickly. And so, yeah, it's going to definitely be a good time for sourcing. And people are, if you just, I mean, I know we do this every year. It's like Christmas time. We've got to clear out old toys to make room for new toys, right? So it's a good time for yard sales. I notice, people, if you're in a cold climate, you're probably not having yard sales, but things like OfferUp, you're going to be able to do a lot better on, because people are trying to get rid of stuff because, hey, we got a new iPad, let's get rid of this old one, or whatever it is. And so that might be the time to snag up a lot of good deals.
So make sure that, you have capital, right? Make sure that, that I would say it's definitely a good time to reinvest in your business by sourcing a lot of goods. I source all kinds of clearance. Now you got to be careful with clearance, but to me, January is a good time for clearance. And so there are some people that source toys and they hold them until the next Q4. That's up to you, right? There's a lot of profit to be made if you do that, if you do play it right, but it's also risky. But there are a lot of items that I do retail arbitrage that I buy and I just hold for 6 months, and then they start selling and I make a lot of money on it. So definitely consider January and about sourcing, and you can still have sales, right? But like Mike said, stores are trying to offload things. People are trying to offload stuff. It's a great month for sourcing.
Yeah. And then you also want to consider January is a good time to, like we talked about, kind of decide what you want to do for the year. Do you need to shift something? Maybe when you do your reflection, you say, hey, these things worked really well. These things didn't work really well. And you got to be paying attention to a lot of things, right? Maybe you're not political. Maybe you don't like to follow things like the stock market and what's happening with, health things and all that stuff. But the closer you follow that stuff, you can start to realize, okay, what are the trends? What's the way our economy is going? How are people shifting the way they're buying? What industries are people have more money available to them? What about, tax returns? All those things you got to kind of consider as you start to look at, how do I need to shift my business? This might have worked in 2020 because it was that time everything was going on, but maybe it doesn't work now. Maybe the things that worked in 2019 didn't work in 2020, but maybe those things are going to start coming in to play again in 2022. Or maybe you've got to really figure out what you're going to do in the coming year. And so this is a good time to kind of say, how do I need to shift to make sure that I make the most money possible? And just because it worked last year doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work this year.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, whether it's sourcing, whether it's, your listing, it's a great time because everybody's trying to start new. So why not you? Why not in your business go, hey, this last year, I probably could have made more profit if I sourced these kind of items, or maybe I want to try something new, or maybe I need an employee, or it's time for me to not just do Amazon. Maybe I need to dabble into eBay or vice versa. Right? This is a great time right now as you're transitioning out of Q4 to think about those things so you can start off 2022 or whatever year you're listening to this the next year on a strong foot. Yeah. And with that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling. Peace.